Hi everybody, how's it going? So a few weeks back I took a trip down to Ocala, which is south of where I live here in Gainesville, Florida. I'd gotten a tip from a fellow record collector, Wes, here in town, Super Wes, here on YouTube. You're probably familiar with his channel. He said that the Humane Society thrift store down there had put out a bunch of new records, and so I was excited to kind of check that out. I hadn't been down that way in probably 2 or 3 years to hit the thrift shops and antique malls and things like that. And I also hit the Goodwill thrift store down there. They have a big Goodwill, and I discovered they have a ton of records and CDs. I don't think I'd ever actually been there before. So the records I'm going to show here are from some are from the Humane Society, some are from the Goodwill. I can't remember which is which, but they all came out to about $1, $1.50 a piece, something like that. So first of all, a nice upgrade here for Les Baxter's Quiet Village. This is a nice clean stereo copy here. I had a clean mono copy, but I wanted to have a stereo copy to get the full effect. Next up, some more Exotica. This is Les Baxter's The Sacred Idol. Apparently this is a soundtrack to a film from the same name. On the back it says haunting melodies and primitive rhythms in selections inspired by the savage splendor of the fabled Aztec Empire. Yeah. Legends, strange and exotic music keyed to the mysterious legends of the feathered serpent of the Aztecs. Kind of cool. Apologize for the glare. I'm just trying to get some videos made here early in the morning. I got some brutal sun coming through the window there. Next up, some jazz here. The Swingin Nutcracker by Shorty Rogers. So it's trumpeter and arranger Shorty Rogers, his take on the Nutcracker. Classical ballet music here. Some good musicians here, a lot of West Coast musicians. Bud Shank, Bill Perkins, Bill Holman, Art Pepper, Richie Kamuka, Shelly Manne on drums, of course. Or no, I'm sorry, Frank Capp and Mel Lewis on drums. I'm surprised there's no Shelly Manne, Conte Candoli on trumpet, all the usual suspects. Pretty cool sort of swinging jazz version of the Nutcracker. Another West Coast jazz kind of thing. This is the Video AllStars TV jazz themes. If you ever see this in thrift stores, it's in halfway decent condition, go ahead and pick it up and give it a shot. It's pretty cool stuff. Kind of crime, detective, private eye theme jazz music here. So you've got a theme from Peter Gunn, 77 Sunset Strip, The Thin Man, Richard Diamond. Who are the Video AllStars? Well, it's arranged and conducted by Skip Martin. But the players include, let's see, Paul Horn, Bob Cooper, Red Mitchell, Jimmy Rowles, Dick Nash, Shelly Manne, Al Hendrickson, Bob Cooper, a lot of the big West Coast jazz players, your typical suspects, the guys who played on like the Peter Gunn soundtrack by Henry Mancini, and touching on the same sort of themes here. And this is on the Somerset label. This is the stereo version, so it's got the Stereo Fidelity logo there. But yeah, good stuff. Definitely if you see it in a thrift store, it's a good pickup. Andre Previn, pianist and one-time conductor of the London Symphony Orchestra. He did some cool jazz stuff with a trio, and in this case a quartet. This is Previn and his quartet doing music for My Fair Lady. And in his quartet here he's got, I'm sure, Red Mitchell on bass, with Frank Capp on drums and Herb Ellis on guitar. Just some fun laid-back stuff, West Coast, not too wild, but fun to listen on Columbia. Lorinda Almeida and the Bossa Nova AllStars. Viva Bossa Nova on Capitol. So Lorinda Almeida was a kind of jazz and Spanish classical guitarist based out of Los Angeles. And Bossa Nova All-Stars are your typical sort of West Coast session musicians here. So of course you've got Shelly Manne on drums with Howard Roberts and Al Viola on guitar, Jimmy Rowles on electric organ, Max Bennett bass, Bob Cooper tenor sax, Don Fagerquist trumpet, Justin Gordon flute. Yeah, just some fun kind of West Coasty jazz type stuff. I don't find a whole lot of Blue Note kind of more improv based prestige type jazz in thrift stores very often. I'm sure if they show up, people grab them pretty quick, but they leave all this West Coast kind of cool, more arranged jazz stuff behind. So that's what I typically find. A few here by Bud Shank, couple here by Bud Shank. He was a good player on the West Coast. His recordings on Pacific Jazz early on were pretty cool. Played sax as well as flute, good flute player, but later on his music got more commercial, and that's kind of what these are. So you've got Bud Shank plays music from today's movies on the World Pacific label. Yeah, I don't. This one's kind of okay. This next one, A Spoonful of Jazz. See here you've got Bud Shank sort of playing some Lovin' Spoonful and other kind of pop rock hits of the day. Arranged and conducted by Shorty Rogers, but it's didn't really do much for me. I think this one's going to be leaving the collection, unfortunately. The Pablo Today series, Norman Granz's label from the late 70s, early 80s, I guess. Sarah Vaughan and the Count Basie Orchestra. Send in the Clowns. I always pick up Pablo's if I can find them cheap. The big band guy, Woody Herman, kind of late in his career. Woody Herman, Light My Fire, arranged by Richard Evans on Cadet, the Cadet label. Kind of a shady concept here, late career Woody Herman. Kind of weird to be on the Cadet label, but it's arranged by Richard Evans. Vinyl's in beautiful shape, and I saw the name Phil Upchurch in the credits, a good kind of jazz funk guitarist, so I figured I'd give it a shot. Dave Pelz Big Band. Dave Pelz, a saxophone player, kind of like a lot of the West Coast sax players, inspired by Lester Young, and his kind of smooth, cool tone. Later on, he became more of an A&R guy for a few different record labels. But he did a series of records here for this company called PRI, which is Precision Radiation Instruments. Kind of a weird company to get into pressing vinyl, but they pressed a series of records here by Dave Pelz Big Band on this cool kind of smoky marbled vinyl. Yeah, sort of yellow and brown marbled vinyl, but they're kind of cool to look at. The music's good. Yeah, so he did a series of these records where he did like the big bands of, say, Artie Shaw, Benny Goodman, things like that. More modern recordings of their big hits. Kind of fun to listen to. Nice to look at. Some Disney for the Disney collection. I took a chance thinking wife probably didn't have this in her Disney collection here. This is Disney presents the title song from Follow Me Boys and other songs for the campfire. Of course, if you're a Disney fan, you recognize the face of Fred MacMurray, star of so many great Disney films back in the day. Yeah, I always pick up Disney records on the Disneyland label if I don't recognize the record. I've got, you know, all the classics, all the Cinderella and Snow White. But if I see something kind of obscure, I'll always pick it up. Yeah, so that was it for Ocala. And then got another tip from Wes as well. Thank you, Wes. That there's a flea market in Waldo, which is kind of northeast of where we live, and they have flea markets on the weekends, but in the same property there's an antique mall, a two-story antique mall. and there's a record dealer in there that has a nice booth with a ton of records, and they're all priced pretty reasonably. And he gave me the tip that the guy added a bunch of records upstairs in the building on the second floor for $1 each, or some of them are $2, but mostly $1. And wanted to check that out, and came home with some cool stuff. First up, really good record. Unfortunately, good record to have. Unfortunately, the vinyl on this one's a little beat up. This is on Contemporary Records. The Poll Winners Ride Again. The Poll Winners were Barney Kessel on guitar, Shelly Manne on drums, and Ray Brown on bass. And I think they got the name the Poll Winners because they'd won first or second place on the sort of like the Downbeat magazine jazz polls, or Playboy jazz musician polls, as best player or whatever. I don't take those sort of things too seriously, because I think back in the day the white guys tended to top the polls, whereas guys like Miles Davis came second or third, which is just totally ludicrous. But anyway, Contemporary always made really nice recordings, so I always pick up any old Contemporary early pressing that I find, or even reissues. Really good record. Unfortunately, it's got some bad scuffs, and some of the tracks actually skip, but I'm going to keep it anyway. Some vocal... Cats are going crazy fighting in the other room. Some vocal jazz here. I'll go through these pretty quick. June Christie. She was a member of Stan Kenton's band. She was a singer in Stan Kenton's band, and as well as her husband, Bob Cooper. This one, June's Got Rhythm, on Capitol. And this was arranged by her husband, Bob Cooper. And just looking at the credits, a lot of the big West Coast jazz players. I'm not going to go through them here, but I always pick up June Christie. It's always a fun listen. Another one, Ballads for Night People. Again, arranged and conducted by Bob Cooper. And I'm sure it's the same roster of the West Coast jazz guys. A lot of them came out of Stan Kenton's band or Woody Herman's band. And then this one, another jazz singer, very similar to June Christie. In fact, she took June Christie's place in the Stan Kenton band when Christie kind of had enough of the touring and left. Christie had heard this woman, a radio broadcast of her, and recommended her to Stan Kenton to take her place in the band. This is Chris Connor. This one on Bethlehem. This one simply titled This Is Chris. Some of the players, probably hard to see here, but I'll read them off. Kai Winding and J.J. Johnson on trombones, Ralph Sharon piano, Herbie Mann on flute, Joe Puma guitar, O.C. Johnson on bass, Milt Hinton on drums. I'm sorry, I got this backwards. Milt Hinton on bass, O.C. Johnson on drums. Cover's a little beat, and it got a little moldy. Cleaned it up the best I could with some Clorox wipes, and bag this one up to make sure it doesn't contaminate anything else. Well, it doesn't really smell moldy. Might leave it in the sun for a little while. Vinyl in pretty good shape. There's the old Bethlehem label. I always pick up Bethlehem Records when I see them, although they're usually pretty beat for some reason. I don't know why. Some early Maynard Ferguson from the MRC label, subsidiary of Mercury. This is a reissue on Trip Records. Trip was a product of Springboard International. You've probably seen Springboard Records. I'm thinking like 1970s kind of reissue label. I've seen Trip Records around. I've actually got another one of Sarah Vaughan. And the quality is actually pretty good. Decent pressings, decent transfers, I guess. I don't know where they get them from. Probably not the master tapes, but they sound pretty good. Maynard Ferguson, I'm not a huge fan of his playing, but some good players on here. Herb Geller, alto sax, Georgie Old, Bill Holman, tenor sax, Bud Shank, baritone sax, Herb Geller's wife, Lorraine Geller on piano, Alvin Stoller on drums, Ray Brown on bass. So some early Maynard Ferguson from 1955, in case you hadn't figured that out. Nice and prominently displayed on the cover there. And let's see, finally this one was $2. It's a double record set. Had 2 or 3 different versions this year's. I think I've got a 2 CD version of this I picked up recently at a thrift store, but this was a looks like an original British pressing, so I figured I'd pick it up. And this is it's not jazz, it's some nice classic rock here. Deep Purple, made in Japan. Pretty sure this is a first pressing on their Purple Records label here. Sounds pretty good. A little scuffed up, but you know, when it comes to hard rock, I don't mind a few scuffs. Definitely don't want scuffs on your classical music or your Brian Eno records. And then this one finally was from another booth at the flea market, or the antique mall. Same antique mall. Most of the other booths there are getting pretty picked over. Some of them are, like this booth is putting things on sale, trying to clear them out, I guess. So originally priced at $3. I think all the records in the booth are marked down to $1.50. This is Sarah Vaughan at the London House on Mercury Records. So live recording. Apparently this is the 3rd show she did this night at the London House in Chicago, and maybe a little worn out, the band a little tired on this one. Good band on here. Let's see, Ronell Bright piano, Richard Davis on bass, and Roy Haynes on drums, as well as Thad Jones on trumpet, Frank West on tenor sax, Henry Coker on trombone, and Wendell Cully on trumpet. I hadn't heard those 2 other guys. Pretty good recording. The very last track, Thanks for the Memory, she actually bungles the lyrics on it. She comes across the term Parthenon, and I guess she's kind of reading the lyrics off a sheet. Didn't have it memorized and wasn't familiar with the song, because when she hits the word Parthenon, she kind of stops cold, and she's not quite sure what that word is.
Castles on the Rhine, Parthenon, Parthenon, Parthenon. I got hung with a word. Parthenon, Parthenon, Parthenon.
It doesn't ring a bell, and it's weird because they leave the whole recording unedited on the record here. So you got to hear stop cold and restart, try it again, stop again, and try it one more time. Interesting recording, probably not one of her best, but still good stuff. So yeah, that's stuff I picked up down in Ocala and up in Waldo. Stepping a little bit out of my normal hunting grounds here. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye. Okay, so I almost forgot. I want to throw this in before I forget. I picked up some CDs down at the Goodwill in Ocala. They had a ton of CDs down there, and just displayed in the most horrific condition on some metal shelves with 2x4s attached on the shelves to keep the CDs from pushing too far back in the shelves. But then what would happen is the stacks of CDs would fall behind these 2x4s, and it's just it was horrific trying to dig through these things. I think a lot of diggers would give up, just say, man, this is too much work. But I hung in there. I had nothing else to do that day, and went through. I even had like kind of rolling carts, these big sort of linen carts, full of CDs, mostly just pure crap, CDs and DVDs, but I managed to find one or two in there as well. So here we go. First of all, some classic VirB jazz from the VirB label. This is Gene Krupa and Buddy Rich. Krupa and Rich. Some really jamming sessions here, featuring these 2 fantastic drummers. Really nice job on the reissue on this. Really classy looking. Got kind of a reproduction of the Clef Records label there, painted on the CD. Reproduction of the back of the LP. Some really good players on here. Oscar Peterson, piano, Dizzy Gillespie, trumpet, Illinois Jacquette on sax. Roy Eldridge, Ray Brown bass, Herb Ellis guitar. Really hot smoking sessions on these. Great listen. Next up, some guitar work from Steve Howe, guitarist from the band Yes, of course. Never been a huge fan of his solo work. It never quite, I don't know, it was never that good, in my opinion. Chris Squire, his solo album Fish Out of Water was just absolutely fantastic. If you're a Yes fan, you gotta own that one. The Steve Howe stuff, I've owned his 2 solo albums from back in the 70s and just never quite got into them. Mostly owned them for the covers by Roger Dean. Nice painted covers on those. But they left the collection a long time ago. But for $1, I figured I'd pick this one up. It's called Natural Timber or Timbre. Yeah, so it's solo guitar pieces. His son Dylan Howe plays drums on a lot of the tracks. Not too exciting, not surprisingly, but the last 3 tracks on the CD are pretty cool. They're acoustic guitar takes on some classic Yes tracks. So you got Your Move, Disillusion, which was part of Starship Trooper, and To Be Over, which is from the Relayer album. So kind of cool to hear some acoustic guitar takes on those tracks. And finally, I saw the big name on this one, and I thought it was, could it be possibly, and sure enough it is. It is Bernie Sanders and 30 Vermont artists, We Shall Overcome, recorded in Vermont in 1987. I believe he was the mayor of Vermont back then. And this was reissued in 2014 to take advantage, I guess, of his notoriety with the elections. Yeah, Bernie Sanders has become a much more of a household name than he was back in 1987, of course. Yeah, actually pretty good recordings. Some folk songs here. He doesn't really sing. He does more of like a spoken word thing on top. Pretty good musicians on here. They don't use anything that would really date the sound, like drum machines or cheesy Casio keyboards. So you've got Oh Freedom by Pete Seeger, The Banks of Marble, Where Have All the Flowers Gone, This Land Is Your Land, and We Shall Overcome. Pretty good stuff.
As I went walking that ribbon of highway, I saw above me that endless skyway. I saw below me that golden valley. This land was made for you and me.
This land is your land. This land is my land.
So yeah, it's kind of a fun pickup. So yeah, that's it. I've got to make some more videos today. Hurricane's kind of closing out of Florida here as I speak, but it's going to hit the panhandle way west of where we are. We shouldn't have anything more than some thunderstorms here. I'm hoping the skies will actually cloud up here a little bit and get rid of some of this glare coming in through the window here. Unfortunately, all the morning sun comes through the window here, and right when I want to make videos, get this horrible glare, so I apologize for that. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the future videos, okay? Bye, guys.